we're going to play a little game of Simon Says. And Simon Says, if you're sitting in the back half of the sanctuary, please move at least 6 pews forward. We'll get there, okay? The food pantry food of the week this week is pancake mix. So as you're doing your grocery shopping, if you can pick up some pancake mix and put it in the appropriate spots. And following the tween service this morning, of course, there is our regular spaghetti fundraiser. They're also looking for donations, candy and treat donations for the egg hunt and Easter celebration, which will be held on April the 9th. There is an insert in your bulletin about lilies for the Easter Sunday services. Please take note of that as you desire to place a lily in the sanctuary. And Brian has a moment for us this morning, and I think Carl's going to follow him.
Good morning. I don't want to mess with your mic. I'm Brian Truesdale. I am making sure that I cover all of this, so I'm reading from my notes, but I'm joining you this morning as part of the transition team. That is the team that is trying to help make sure that we have continuity and stability on the pulpit during this time of transition up until we find our called pastor. And as promised, we want to try to keep you updated as things progress during this time of transition. And so we do have something to share with you, or a few things. So I'm going to read. At our last session meeting, the transition team presented some recommendations to sessions, some of which are being actioned upon now. The first, and you may have seen this in the weekly updated, was to hire Reverend Dr. Megan Boozer on a part-time basis as a part-time pastor, preaching about one Sunday a month and assisting with pastoral care. Now, our plan is to have her serve about 10 or 15 hours a week, so truly a part-time position, and we do want to respect her time as someone who has recently retired. And so you'll expect to see her on a truly part-time basis, but she will help to fill the gap, so to speak, as we continue through this process of trying to find our called pastor. And so you'll start to see her in the rotation on Sundays here at the pulpit. Beginning 2 weeks from now, as a matter of fact, she will come up here. And she's going to also lead us through our Easter Day service here in the sanctuary. Second, we're going to continue to have Brad Hill and Jean and Paul and some others in the other weeks to continue to fill in for the foreseeable future. And so you'll continue to see a mix of some of us in between having Brad and Dr. Megan Boozer. Third, we are going to continue Presbytery resources moderate our session. So Ed Blank, who comes from the Presbytery, has been moderating our session for the last few months. Very likely he will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. But if not him, somebody else from the Presbytery. So Dr. Boozer will not be doing that as part of her part-time role. Fourth, we recommended that we hire a ministry consultant to help us through our transition. This was one of the possibilities presented as an alternative to hiring a traditional interim or traditional pastor. And one of the advantages of doing this is that it's a much faster process than trying to find a transitional pastor. I believe there are now 13 churches, give or take, that are looking for someone. By looking to a consultant, we can sort of avoid the issue of trying to compete with all of those other churches to try to find a transitional pastor. We are looking at 2 different particular consultants right now to us, both of which come highly recommended. They have their relative advantages and disadvantages. So the transition team is interviewing those, discerning and looking through some documentation that was shared with us about how they helped some other churches in the area recently do their transitions. And finally, we recommended that we begin our process to call a pastor as soon as possible. We made a lot of these decisions with the to continue the relatively quickly so that we could immediately begin looking for our called pastor, which is a perfect transition this morning to talk about that. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Carl Francisco, and I chair the congregation-wide nominating committee. Before I go into my announcements, though, I'm going to make a little stage. For the folks that have already logged into our live stream, I'm probably going to restart the live stream during our first hymn. So for those of you online right now, bear with me while I do that, and we'll get back to you just as quickly as we can. So the nominating committee will meet in person for the first time since I took that chairmanship tomorrow evening. Our first agenda item for this meeting is to identify 2 more nominees to round out our Board of Trustees. The individuals that are ultimately nominated were voted on by the congregation at a congregational meeting May 4th down in the FLC following the 10 a.m. services. So please put that on your calendars and try to be there if you would. If you have any interest and feel inspired to join our Board of Trustees, just so you don't have that fear of missing out, you've got about another 24 hours or so to let me know or just contact your favorite elder and let them know, and we'll make sure that your name is in the mix for those nominees. The other agenda item we'll do our best to balance our time on is the beginnings of our effort to populate a pastor nominating committee. So this is a nominating committee nominating nominees for another nominating committee to help us find a pastor, if you're following along. This committee, the PNC, if you haven't been around a church that has this, should be thought of more like one of the church boards in terms of the commitment level and the importance of their work. Well, especially in the life of our church, potentially, and I would say hopefully, the course of a decade plus, if you think about, would hope to find a pastor that gels very well with our congregation and the many different aspects of our church life, and is here for a good while. But as such, in terms of the importance of this committee, the nominees will be voted on in a future congregational meeting. I think it would take some miracle work to have that list completely ready, and I don't know, Dave, maybe you can say if we can vote on them as identified while we're still building the committee, or if they should all be voted on as a group. All be as a group. So yeah. So not on May 4th. In exchange for the commitment of being a member of the PNC and what it's going to require of the individuals there, I'm sure it's going to inspire a sense of contribution, close connections with your fellow nominating committee members, and with the congregation as a whole. It is a lot of work, but I think it's a way to connect with your fellow congregants here at PC Falling Spring. So I'd ask each of you to devote some thought and some prayerful consideration to volunteering, to being a nominee